Welcome to Koffee Talks, a Pokemon card collecting podcast, featuring David Person, owner of the world's most complete English Pokemon card collection, and Dan Norton, a longtime collector with all the knowledge behind the cards.
Hey everyone, how is it going? Welcome back. Welcome to another episode of Koffee Talks. We're back on just cameras again. Obviously, I'm no longer still at David's place. But David, how has life been since I left?
Dan, I can hear you. Are you in there? Like there's a little hole on the computer. Are you in there somewhere?
I'm in here somewhere.
Okay. All right, Dan. Good. Dan, it's been so good since you've left, only specifically because you left. And wait till I get to the rant today. That's what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
So I think that's going to be a really exciting feature of this particular podcast for people to hear about how your stay was at my home with your wonderful sugar mama wife. So yeah, Dan, it's been good. And I'm glad you got home safe and sound. I'm glad most of my cards got to me while you were here. So thank you for all that before I rail on you later. Dan, I thought in our intro here, because I know you may want to say something about yourself. So get that out of the way if you want to say it. But then I want to tell everybody what the heck you did here. It's mind-boggling. It's absolutely incredible. So you tell me, do you want to say anything before I hop into what you were doing while you were in my home for a week?
Well, I figured I'd just mention that I got a Pokemon Center delivery day. We got our Pokemon Day promo, the Cerulege. I know you've ordered something. I don't know if yours has arrived yet, has it?
It hasn't arrived, and I thought that was going to be an in the news portion, but it sounds like you're so excited to get to it.
I guess I just mentioned that's the big Pokemon thing I did sort of this week. I actually haven't done too much video work this week because since we got back, I've been on a bit of an organization kick. I do have some videos to do. I have another video of stuff that I did while I was there. So what we're about to talk about might get fleshed out in another video that I'm doing. But I've really just been on organization. You know, I ordered some more binders. I think organizing your stuff maybe gave me a little bit of a kick to organize my own stuff a little bit better. So that's what I've been doing. I think it's time where I need to just start ordering binders and stop ordering cards for a little bit and get some stuff figured out in here.
I think that's incredible. You know, I think it's so important in life between friendships and partnerships, just like working out in the gym. If you have somebody to hold you accountable, we were talking about your use of even Google spreadsheets and stuff that, we were talking about and collaborating between when you were here. So all of these kinds of things are really neat. And even when it comes to, I was reading something recently about, it was about journaling about your life. So of course I'm a financial advisor and I talk to people about, starting to write things down for their families, for their kids, because invariably you forget things over the course of time. And if you have a partner in that endeavor and you just have somebody that doesn't really ask you what you're writing, but did you write something today? Did you write something this week? It's been proven to be much more successful. So I'm glad that you got something out of the visit as well, because I obviously got a ton more from you than you'll ever get from me. So thank you for that. I do want to say, just to echo what you said, that I guess as we do this on Monday, February 26th, tomorrow is Pokemon Day. And of course, if there's an avocado day, there's got to be a Pokemon day. So why not? And again, won't have this out quite by then. Our video will come out after that, a couple of days. But we'll show the card and other things later when we get to in the news portion. So that stuff's always fun. What you did, I'm sorry, Dan, you know how we always say this every time. Let me get the caveats out. Number one, folks, if you're new to the podcast, technology is horrible. We've had the governor of Nevada has come to my home to try to reinstall our internet. Nothing works. It's not going to work. It's not a money thing, guys. It's just, it doesn't work. So we do the best we can. I only hear half of what Dan says, and that's probably a good thing because otherwise we'd even fight more. Number two, if you see the beard on my face, the wife has said, hey, if you don't color it, you're in trouble. I hate it already. So even if you color it, I less hate it, but I still hate it. So now she's started coloring it. So I have no choice, guys. I just do whatever I'm told. Number three, it's the same shirt that's been on in every single video. I actually haven't changed my clothing in 32 days now because of my life being so busy. And I'm embarrassed about it. I'm not happy about it. I'm not bragging about it. It is what it is. So just look past, maybe just put like something up like this where you don't see me when I'm chatting. Actually, that means you'd still hear me and that would be even worse. So never mind. Just put a paper bag over your head and act like you're listening to someone else. Here's what Dan did when he was in my house. Okay. I just wrote down a couple of notes. It's absolutely numbing First of all, he took every single binder in my entire collection and he looked in them. He looked in every binder. He looked in every shelf of every room, of every box of every shelf, of every card in my office, okay? I found him one time sitting on the floor with my box of singles, an 800 count. No, it wasn't 800. It's probably a 2,400 count box of singles.
It's a 5K. It's a 5,000 count box.
5,000 count box. And I go, Dan, what are you doing in the box? Because anybody knows if somebody's doing that when you're not around. I trust him implicitly. I'm not sure why, but I do. And if there's anybody you can trust, it's Dan Norton of the Ohio Nortons. And so I'm like, what are you doing? I told you there's nothing else in there that's going to have anything to do with my collection. And he's like, David, shut up your stupid mouth. I already found 5 cards in there that are not in the binders and they got to go out from there. And I'm like, okay, buddy, you do your thing and I'm just going to shut up. And that's what he did. He went through every single box, little box, big box, 5,000K box, every binder, crazy stuff. And then he built a list of every card that I needed to complete sets that weren't complete. Because since the pandemic, I've had an excuse to say I'm old and I have long haul COVID and I barely can get up and breathe in the morning. And who's going to get me back on track except for my great buddy, Dan Norton, who said, David, we can't let the legacy just fall flat like this. You don't want to be a fraud, especially with that guy out there that calls out anybody that he thinks is a fraud. I kid. I love that guy. God, I wish I could get a baby something and put it in my mouth. Never mind. I can't talk. So anyways, he built a list of every card I'm missing, both regulars and jumbos, because you guys know I do the jumbo stuff too. The jumbo is the most underappreciated cards in the hobby. I don't care. You guys can hate them all you want. They're gorgeous. I love them. I have every one. I'm working on having every one. I have all the early ones. And then he's also going through Scarlet and Violet Black Star promos I'm not up to date on, and the Last of the Sun and Moon but Black Star promos, and the Sword and Shield Black Star promos, all those. Then variants from every single set, all of these different boxes. And then he's looking at all the collection boxes that I have on shelves and saying we should open this one, we shouldn't open this one, there's jumbos in this one, there's not jumbos in this one, we can buy these cards cheaper, you can just keep that collection box sealed for yourself for later, even all the way down to regional cards, staff cards, everything, okay? Then he's guiding me in how we're going to open all these collection boxes, pull out the cards, do whatever we have to do. After we do all that, we have to go to eBay night after night and buy either eBay or TCG Play or whatever and be able to buy all these cards we need, okay? That seems to be his favorite part, spending my money. I don't know why that is. He seems, but a lot more, Dan, he doesn't smile very much or laugh. Boy, is he having a giggly old time spending my money. And then when the cards come in, every card has to be checked. Now, Dan is gone and I'm doing that myself on a list that Dan built for me. Okay, so he's done all the work. And then after that, I have to return the bad or wrong cards and reorder those cards again. Now, I want to just say one thing real quick. Somebody challenged me, a friend of mine, said, David, why do you care if a $2 card is wrong when it comes to you? Why don't you just put it aside and buy another one? And I said, because it's not the money, it's the principle. If you're going to advertise a line hollow card and it's a Cosmos hollow card that you send me, then I didn't end up buying that line hollow card from someone else. And that's not fair. You need to be accurate with your listings. If you're going to advertise a near mint to mint card and I'm going to get something that looked like it fell under the card tire on the hollow area and it's lightly played to extremely lightly played to extremely moderately played to heavily played and it's ripped in half, don't send me that card because I'm not an idiot. And I need to buy things that I think I'm buying. Otherwise, business is going away from someone else. Folks should be accountable. Not everybody can run the same business and stuff. And then there's all these new players and new folks, new sellers on eBay that send me something and they're like, that's a mint card. I said mint. And I said, no, that's a light play card. Well, I'm sorry, it must have been damaged in shipping and I don't offer any refunds. So you're SOL. And I said, buddy, I don't think you understand that I have 2,000 feedbacks, all positive. You've got 10. You don't know what you're getting into. He said, you obviously don't know card conditions. Just a second. I can't breathe. Just give me 1 sec. Yeah, I don't know card conditions. So you know what I did? He got some bad feedback. His 100% rating is gone. I complained. Maybe they'll pull him off the system for calling me a couple of names and telling me he was going to sabotage my eBay site. So I do consider myself a veteran enough of this hobby to hold people accountable. Okay, that's my little tangent. I just want to say thanks to Dan Norton for doing all of those things to basically help me get remotivated again, to get all the sets up to date. Now the next one we have to work on is Paldean Fates because I have no idea how I'm going to pick that one up. Dan says there's going to be booster bundles coming out now. They're out now and that people are going to finally get something cheaper to build sets for and we can move on from there. But But Dan, how did it feel to do all of that stuff when you were here? Are you still exhausted, my friend?
I was exhausted for a couple of days when we got back. I had a couple of days where I was basically just sleeping and trying to get back on a sleep schedule again. But it felt good to at least know what you need, because that's always been the biggest thing. Was especially with there's a couple of older internationals promos that you still need. We pretty much knew what you had for the Brilliant Stars Ultra Balls, which, except for, hey, David's like, I thought I bought the Champion North America one, and I was like, well, I've looked through all of your international stuff, I've looked through all of your, like, high-end stuff that you had separate, it's not there. Where was it? It was in that 5,000 count box in the closet. A Champion stamped North American Internationals. But we found that one. But now we know exactly which of the double colorless energies and the first Ultra Ball that you're missing. And you know what? I'm going to read them out on here just in case anyone happens to have these. So, double colorless energy from Evolutions. The first one that just says International. It was the European one, but it just says the word International. We need a staff. We need a top 8. And then for Latin America, we need the unstamped player one. That's what we still need for the double colorless energy. And the first Ultra Ball, the Sun and Moon Ultra Ball, we need the European top 8. I know we're trying to contact with someone with that one at the moment, but hey, if you do happen to have one, drop us a message, because that's the other one that we're still after. And then, the Brilliant Stars, we are still after a European staff as well, but I think we've got that locked up. And then other than that, it's just the Asian ones, which we have had some success with this week, but we'll talk more about those when cards actually start arriving, rather than when we've just started making deals. But it is good to know exactly what you're missing, and it did work out where once we opened up all of those collection boxes, and then once we went onto eBay and just bought all of the cheaper cards, the $2-3 cards. I think you spent a lot of money on eBay, but I think the most expensive card you probably bought on eBay was maybe only about $10-15. There was maybe one or two staff cards that were maybe $30-40, but the majority of it was just these $2 or $3 cards that, it adds up. But after everything that you've ordered, you're missing less than 100 cards from Sword and Shield on, and that's like 4 years or something. So that's a very manageable number, I think. To have gone that long without ever updating your binders, to only be missing less than 100 cards, I think we're in a very good spot. And I know I've already picked some up for you. We've got some more ordered, and I'm sure I will be back out there again at some point, and we'll keep adding to the binders, and we'll get it all updated again.
Yeah, after you hear my rant, you may not come quite as soon as you're ready to come, but I get it. I love the goal of coming here again. That feels really good, especially when the weather is warmer. Yeah. I did spend a little bit more money, Dan. We did buy the Jolteon and what is that guy? Maybe Flareon boxes.
Jolteon and Flareon, yeah. For some reason, you had the Vaporeon box that came with the V Max and the Jumbo V Max, but you didn't have the Flareon Jolteon ones. And because those promos are so expensive, and because you want the Jumbos, you ended up just ordering the boxes for those. Generally, when we were opening the boxes that you had, like the collection boxes, if they had a Jumbo, we were opening them, because you've talked quite a bit, I think, about how it's very difficult to ship Jumbos. Like, Jumbos people take a lot less care with, because most people don't just have Jumbo top loaders lying around. And the Jumbos themselves tend not to sell for that much. They're normally pretty cheap, so people don't go out of their way to buy these Jumbo top loaders. So it's a lot harder to get them in very good condition, which is why we opened the boxes if you had them for those Jumbos.
Yeah, I think it's just so interesting how I really do take pride in the Jumbo collection, because I don't even think there'd be anybody that would even have a goal of collecting every Jumbo, but it's really cool. And being able to show some of those ones that are, I try to show in my Instagrams every once in a while, are pretty cool as well. And then, like you said, the regional staff cards were a bit more expensive as well. I think we went into the $60 and $70 on some of those cards too, but not horrifically bad. So that was good. So I'll say it again for those that are listening. I am going to need Paldean Fates, just in case anybody's out there building a master set. Please keep this in mind. Keep me in mind. And I do want to say one last thing. There's a set we didn't get to talk about, Dan and I. We didn't get to handle together. And Dan went home to try to start working on that. And I just think it's one of the most weird and different sets that's ever going to be out there. And I remain convinced that virtually no one is going to try to complete that as well. They'll try to pull certain cards from it for their character collections. And Dan, what would that set be?
I have no idea. What are you talking
I'm talking about the one set that you and I did not concentrate on here. You took a few pictures of some of the cards I had, and then you went home to give it some work.
Yes, the prize pack collections. I guess I should mention that you missing the 100 cards that you're missing doesn't include the prize pack collections, because I'm going to be working on that separately, because I actually have a ton of sealed prize packs, because I figured if I'm opening them, I want a set, Laura wants a set, now you want a set, it's going to be easier for me to just build it up. So I took some photos of the bigger cards that you've bought, so the Vs, the V-Stars, that kind of thing, so I at least know not to get a third of those. But you've got a few of the bigger ones. You've got the Charizard V-Star from Series 2, and you have the Pikachu V-Max from Series 1. Obviously, the biggest one, and one that you're still missing, is the Charizard V-Max from Series 1. That's the biggest card there is for prize packs. There's always going to be that. And the thing is, you bought in a lot of prize pack Series 1. You have a lot there, but I think we've mentioned it before. If there wasn't an overlap between Series 1 and Series 2, we maybe would open the Series 1 and try and get lucky and hit the Charizard. But it's the fact that of the Vs and VMAXs, those hits, about 2/3 of those are also in Series 2. If you open all of them and you only hit stuff that was also in Series 2, you've just bottomed out so hard on money. I mean, I do like the way that they've got that overlap. It means there's not actually that much that was unique to Set 1, but it does mean that with the price of Set 1 packs going way up and the price of Set 2 and 3 coming way down, it's definitely not worth opening Pack 1.
And I think that is going to be one of the most interesting podcasts that we ever do. When you're able to build one complete set, hopefully 2 or 3, but at least one complete set, and you're able to just articulate specifically exactly how you differentiate between what's in 1, 2, 3, and now 4. As this thing continues to sort of create a life of its own going in the background, I think there'll be so much information that people will enjoy learning about whether or not that is a complete set or just where they can best obtain their favorite characters or what are the big hits, etc. So I'm looking forward to that. So please get on it. Don't let it sit out there another year or two, Dan. You've got priorities.
No, I won't.
Okay. All right.
I think the goal is to have it at least all done by the end of March, because we've got a couple of card shows coming up at the end of March. So if we pull, 4 copies of something, or we pull 3 copies of something you already have, then I want to make sure I have those extra singles ready to go when we go to the card show.
Good. All right, my friend. Well, I'm ready to do. It's been a while, but we can jump into a few comments that I have listed from the last couple of videos.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at your comments.
Okay, so yeah, we haven't really done comments in a while, because the last one was that in-person one where we just talked about trophy cards, and then I think it was right before that we had Dan on, right? So it's been a good couple of weeks. Or was there an episode after Dan? I don't remember.
I don't think so. I think you posted something after Dan, which was just a clip on the MetaZoo thing,
right?
And then
and
so I always take responsibility, guys. You know what? It's just not fun. It is not fun being 62, and I say it all the time. I'm doing the best I can, but poor Dan, it's like, can you film today? And I'm like, Dan, I got a migraine. My back hurts. I'm laying down. So this is basically as best I can do. And if you don't like it, well, please be more responsible. Like it anyways, okay? Or just give a little leeway. But so the comments have been out. I can't highlight every comment. It's been like 6 years since we've done comments. I just wanted to put a few in. First, I'm going to caveat, like I always do, by saying, if you shared our podcast in your stories, I'm more than grateful. It's not only to share the podcast, but also to share any of my Instagram stories that I post every single day. Dan and I can't do this without you guys and your constant, kind support. So I can't get to all that today of everybody that shared, but it is encompassed in the drawing to come later. Because, of course, if you do share, which I'll discuss again, you get an extra entry into the drawing. So thank you very much to everybody that shares any kind of thing that we do or follows us. But here's a couple of comments. Let's start back at the show we did with Dan from Catch 'em All Collectibles. So first of all, Codes and Cards Pro said, great conversation. It is awesome that you have been able to open one of almost every box, Dan. Pretty incredible when you think about it, especially to me, Well, both Dan and I, who really don't open, well, Dan does open. I guess he opens for views the later stuff on his YouTube channel. I've never opened any boxes, so to me, other than I guess I did a couple of like live streaming and some newer stuff like 2 years ago, but that was it. And then he goes on to say, it is also interesting to hear your perspective on grading in the sample of about 200 regrades you did and those results. So that was coming off our grading podcast. And so it was really interesting to hear his experimentation with the different companies and how they did when he resubmitted. As always, thank you to the host for providing a super great platform discussion and asking good questions. All the questions that I asked, just so you know, they don't come from me at all. They all come from Dan Norton. They're basically fed to me on what's called a podcast teleprompter. And so I then read what Dan writes. And so I'm always hoping something doesn't pop up there that says like peanut butter and jelly right in the middle of when I'm asking questions. But I do want to thank Codes and Cards Pro for indicating what Dan and I have found out, the good way, the bad way, the hard way, the reality, which is whenever we have a guest on, it gets 67% more views than anything the two of us to do together. So Dan can Dan can fly into California, post every single trophy card in one place, never been seen before, can't be seen again, except for between the two of us and a podcast. And it can get 700 views. And you put Dan at Catch 'em All Collectibles. Apparently they call him the fisherman. He's out there, and he's got nothing going on. He's just hanging out with some nice lady, his wife. And then Nostalgianomics goes out there and Alex, and he's got nothing going on. Every other podcast says the hobby's ready to die. These guys are getting 2,000, 6,000 views, and they're not saying a darn thing, okay? We love both of them. They say everything. They don't say anything. And so nobody cares. They want the drama. They want the Love Island, stuff. They want Bachelorette Pokemon edition. And but I appreciate whoever's watching, and if you guys keep doing that. So thanks. Dan, anything? I know you like to always comment about how wonderful it is when we get our views from all these other guests we put on.
Yeah, I like to think that if we went on someone else's podcast that people didn't know about yet, that our viewers didn't know about, they'd also go over there. But I don't think I think if people have found our podcast, they already know about all of the other Pokemon podcasts there are. I don't think you find us without having found those guys.
Yeah. All right, Dan. I love your optimism. Just keep it up because it's not going to last for too long. Youth will finally prevail, and then or old age will, and then there's nothing left to hope for. Lamar Kaiser wrote, just for the record, I like the old faces and the new one. This is all about the Dan at Catch 'em All podcast. Great talk and great company with Dan number 2. Looking forward to being on here with you all someday. Now, the reason I put this in is because I need Dan Norton to step up. So start sending him DMs, guys, and say, where are the additional guests that are coming on? Who have you scheduled? We love this stuff. And then say, Dan, remember you were talking about doing a podcast where you might do 5 different guests for 10 minutes or 4 different guests for 15 minutes once a month? When is that going to happen, Dan, so we can see all these other wonderful collections featured, because we need it. Stop promising and under-delivering. Start promising and over-promising and over-delivering. Dan Norton, your comments.
Well, remember at the start of this how you mentioned it was hard enough for me to get you on for 1 podcast a week. Imagine if I then also had to get you on for 5 more times during the week to interview people in 15-minute chunks. Imagine that.
I don't know how I got the blame on all this, but I'm going to go ahead and take my accountability and responsibility, and I promise I'll be more of a regular so you can't get out of your responsibilities as well. Mr. Walrus said, really enjoyable episode. Dave's interview style is really starting to flourish, asking good questions out of curiosity and not leading into any gotcha moments. Good stuff. And isn't that funny that the gotcha moments are what everybody's waiting for? And we just don't do that, okay? I want to do the gotcha moments. Dan Norton won't let me because it's a PG rated podcast, and I've got so much dirt on everyone in this hobby. It's sick, okay? I have one the only cabinet Dan Norton could not get in when he was at my house is triple locked. And he's like, David, what's in there? And I'm, no, you're never going to find out. It's basically my dirt cabinet. This is where all the dirty laundry on all your big influencers is kept. So don't ever go ballistic on me if you're out there and you think you got something on me, because there's a lot you can have on me, probably nothing, possibly you might, because I've always got something on all of you. But I'm not going to put the gotcha questions out there because Dan won't let me. And by the way, as I said just moments ago, based on the podcast teleprompter, I really can't put anything out other than what Dan puts in front of me. All right, so by the way, since I'm not going to do any gotcha moments, this is the reason everybody should be on our podcast. So line up, get in line. It's like an American Idol audition. Just tell us what you want to do and we'll get you on the show. JG Lover 94. And by the way, I know this person, one of the best lovers I've ever heard about. Not in that way, just loves people. Found this podcast a couple weeks ago and finally got caught up right as this dropped. Thanks for everything you do for the hobby. Question, how do you price out slow or non-moving items? I'm looking at some mid-era sealed items like 2007 Feraligatr Epic Collection, but can't find good pricing data on it. Dan, any thoughts on that?
I think if you've got something like that where there isn't too much pricing data, the best thing to do is always to put it out there with a number that you think is too high and say that you're taking offers, because that way people who want it, you'll get people out of the woodwork who are actually going to make these offers. You don't want to just say, I don't know, make me offer it. It never really gets a conversation going when neither party wants to start first. So if you start with a number that is, at least if it's too high, the worst they can do is come back and offer you lower. You can kind of get a feel for things like that. Difference is, decide, is this something I really want to sell? Am I trying to sell this? Or is this something where I'd like to sell it, but I'm also okay just having it for another couple of years? If it's something you really want to get out the door quick, definitely come down for a lower price. Definitely be willing to take an early offer that comes in. But if it's something that you don't know the price on, but you don't have to sell it right now, you're not desperate for the money, you can just let it sit there. You can let it go, gather some interest, just get some people towards it. That would be my biggest advice.
Yeah, I mean, and I think also another thing you can do also is you can ask people for advice. So I'm a big fan and believer of doing that. You can't take everyone's advice, but you start to get a feel when you start to listen to the comments, who's really giving you their best advice and who's giving you something that's self-serving, or who's trying to act like they know something and doesn't have a clue at all. So if you can do that, if you can say, hey, I have this item and I'm wondering what it's valued at. Anybody, I can't seem to find data on eBay. Look at eBay current, look at eBay previous sales. Go to TCG Player, same kind of thing. And finally, you can look at sites like TCG Fish, which have previous data on basically anything that's kind of commonly sold for sure. So you go back, you look at that stuff, and you can talk to folks like, me that may have the more rare stuff and have some kind of, clarity on it, color around it as well. But I think it's good to ask people and just put it out there and say, hey, can you guys help me establish a value? And then, kind of navigate through what's the right information, the bad information, to come to something that's somewhere in between that's actually going to be the most accurate information. Okay, at Pokey.
But if you're specifically, hang on. If you are specifically talking about Feraligatr EX Epic collections, if anyone has one of those and they decide to bust it open for whatever reason, please get in touch and sell us the non-hollow Swampert that comes in there, because that's one of the few cards from that era that David's still missing, and it's one that appears very, very rarely online in good condition. So just if anyone happens to bust one of those and doesn't want the non-hollow Swampert.
Yeah, so
from EX Emerald.
So hopefully Dan finished that comment, as of course I couldn't hear it. But now that Dan said that, JG Lover 94, I've got some information for you. Your deck is worth virtually nothing, but I appreciate you asking. And if you'd like to sell it to me for virtually nothing, I would buy it for almost nothing or just a few dollars. And then I could grab that card out of it, and then we could just whatever we need to do the rest of the time. Now that would be a self-serving answer, right? We don't do that, okay? So get yourselves together, have a little bit of ethics, morality, and come up with the right answer, regardless of whether or not you need something or not, okay? Continuing with the Dan comments, what a treat to have such a humble fisherman on the channel. This came from @PokeyBB. I do think Uncle Dave was a little too easy on him, though. I just thought I'd reiterate the fact that I seem to be all throwing softball questions out there. Not okay. Dan, write me harder questions. Your average player 0 said, my favorite tax accountant together with the liberal. I guess the tax accountant is Dan at Catch 'em All Collectibles. The liberal is clearly Dan Norton. The guy's impossible. Talk about elections. Don't talk about it with him. And my personal trainer with a bad back. We know who that is. I don't care. Pain means nothing to me. You just lift. What more can I ask for? Yes, it was a great compendium of all your best social influencers, social media that people don't even care about. And then Laura Norton. I know her. She comes out and says, when is the Sugar Mamas podcast dropping? Okay, stop. Listen, Dan Norton. This is a fantastic idea. We have to make this happen. A podcast with either Laura and or Alex at Nostalgianomics' wife and or Dan at Catch 'em All Collectibles' wife. We get them on. We could even do a Zoom call. I don't care. And all the Sugar Mamas are yapping about how much they hate the fact that their men spend all this money on Pokemon cards. Okay, so just keep it in mind.
Yeah.
Stop letting all the best ideas fly through the ventilation system and get on it. Okay, Dan?
Sure. And well, Alex and Dan, if you're watching, float that idea past your wives. Let us know what they think, and if anyone else is a Pokemon collector fully off the back of having a sugar mama, let us know. Maybe we can get that going.
Yes, I love it. I love the Sugar Mama. We're going to start the Coffee Talks special edition, Sugar Mama special editions. Okay. And then finally, we'll end up on the Dan at Catch-em-all Collectibles comments with this one from our favorite guy, Craig Holmes. I feel if Dave was to grade his cards, it would send him down another rabbit hole of not only wanting every English card, but to then want every card in a 10 as well. Boy, when you understand the addictive nature of this hobby and anything like this, Craig is actually completely right that it is so scary to think about what it would do when you do start grading, because like I can't live without nines, so certainly I can't live without eights. And then something comes back as a 7, it's completely wrong. But then I really want 10s. And then 10 cards come back as a 10, but the last 2 come back as 9s. What do I do? So just a great in-tune comment with the difficulties of psychologically handling collecting at this level.
Yeah, let me tell you, one of the scariest moments when I was over at your place is I overheard a phone call you were having. I wasn't eavesdropping, you were in the same room as me. And you mentioned a rare magic card. And it's not something you're going to be buying. We're not going to go into too much detail. It was just something you were discussing with someone. But I had a panic of the moment of, if he's going into rare magic cards now, we're in trouble. Because that is like, the trouble we have getting you everything for Pokemon is tenfold with Magic, you know? They don't have quite as many of the trophy card level stuff, but just there's so much that we would just not be able to do it because I know that you wouldn't be able to buy Magic and just buy a couple of rare cards. If you got into Magic, you would get into Magic, and then that would be terrible for all of us.
Well, what did you write me today? Tell the folks you sent me a message today, and it said something about Magic, and you compared, and you basically were telling me how lucky I was that I didn't collect Magic. And tell the audience why.
Yeah, because I had noticed Magic did some presentation this weekend at the Pro Tour, and they were showing off new sets, but they were showing off cards from 5 or 6 different sets. There was just so much being shown, and I looked, and all of this stuff is due out before August. And so I looked, and I was like, how many Magic cards have actually come out this year already? And so I wondered, if you were collecting Magic the same way you do with Pokemon, where you only want cards in English, but you want every variant, so you would want all promo stamped, all foils, everything like that, you would already, in 2024 alone, bearing in mind it's not even March yet, there would be over 3,000 cards you would have to get. 71 of them would be serialized cards to less than 500 copies. And there would also be a couple of very rare Pro Tour cards from the Pro Tour this weekend and the Secret Lair Showdown that went on at the same time. But I honestly think if you were collecting Magic, having to track down those like 1 of 4 or 1 of 20 Pro Tour cards wouldn't feel as bad as buying all the serialized stuff from packs. At least if I was helping you do it, I know that we'd feel so much more of an achievement when it's like, okay, we got this one card, and it's cost you way more, but there's a story behind it. You know, it was you had to do so well at this tournament to get it. It was only available in this one place. Feels so much better than, okay, this card's out of 100 because they just only decided to put 100 copies in booster packs. You know, that kind of thing just doesn't feel as good when you're buying cards. And with Pokemon, I think the number is somewhere close to 1,000 that you would have to get so far this year. But I also say with Magic, in 2 weeks' time, that number goes up by about another 1,500 when the Fallout special set drops.
Wow. It does make me wonder, you know, I've always kind of billed myself as, which is a correct billing, it's not fake or anything, as, you know, the number 1 most complete English language Pokemon card collection. And it does make me wonder who else is out there on the Magic side or on the Japanese side that is doing the same thing? There's got to be somebody, at least one, if not more, that are basically saying we're trying to collect every single card. And again, I don't really follow folks enough to know who those folks would be, but if you guys know, if anybody knows who the same comparable person is in Japanese Pokemon or Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever, I'd love to just see those folks and see what their websites look like or their Instagrams look like, and just hear about their names, because I think it'd be really cool. So
I mean, I think the only way that happens is someone would have had to have started a long time ago. In Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, like really any card game now, it's borderline impossible to jump in and say, okay, I'm going to start collecting now. Can I collect everything? Because even with Pokemon, even if you don't count the trophy cards that you've got, it would still be so hard to put together the rest of what you've got, because it's just, there's so many sets, there's so many variants, there's so many errors, there's so much stuff that just barely pops up. With Magic, you're going back even further than that, and even ungraded copies of cards from Magic Alpha and Beta go for tens of thousands sometimes. It would have to be someone who has been in it for the long haul and has had the money to keep up with it, which is a really unique thing that so few people do. The people who were collecting back then, when it wasn't worth anywhere near as much, generally aren't the people with that level of disposable income where they could keep up to date with it now. Because I think there were people back in the day I knew who were trying to collect Japanese sets, even when it was a lot harder to do. But now there's so many secret rares and stuff. It's hard. They wouldn't even be able to afford to complete every Japanese set, because there's just so many of them so often, with so many secret rares and stuff, and so many cards where every set has like one card that will go for hundreds of dollars, maybe a couple of cards, and it's just so hard to keep up with that. And that doesn't even get into the fact that if they didn't get Japanese trophy cards back then, which, I mean, we know that no one got basically every Japanese trophy card. There was people had some, there were people who would have, some people would have illustrators and TMBs or whatever like that, but then the snap cards, we know, as far as we know, no one in the world has a set of those. That kind of thing, no one could, without having access to tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, no one could jump in now for Pokemon Japanese. And then the same with Magic, I think. And I don't know too much on Yu-Gi-Oh! I think with Yu-Gi-Oh! The majority of the peak of the cards in terms of value is, again, Japanese. With those early Japanese trophies and stuff, I think that's where the majority of the money lies. Obviously, with the exception of that Tyler the Great Warrior that we talked about, the one of one Make-A-Wish card a while back. Right. But I would love to know if anyone does that for any of these games, because honestly, I don't think it's possible. Even dead CCGs, like we've talked about, I collect dead CCGs and stuff a bit. It's hard. Like, I'm collecting Lord of the Rings, and that was a game that was only alive for, I think less than 10 years. It was maybe 7 or 8 years the game was alive for. And even now, like, price-wise, that's hard to master set, because everything's so much.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that it's probably like what I'm involved in. If you find the person that's been involved for a while, all the way back in the beginning, and maybe they were similarly addicted for whatever reason, or felt like, you guys know I've kind of always felt an obligation. I have no idea why. It's not good to be a people pleaser, but I am. And although the books say try not to please everyone because you only make yourself more frustrated. So who am I pleasing by doing all this? But I've always felt that way, trying to keep the collection alive. So it has to be someone who's been doing it from the beginning, based especially on everything you're saying. Too hard to get in now. All right, I'm going to move on to our podcast together this past week, and just a few comments from that real quick. So Playscape Games said, "This is historic. Thanks for sharing." Ponga Collectibles said, "Seeing all these together on one table is insane. So much history." So I want to thank both of them for being 2 of the 10 viewers to actually watch the podcast. It's amazing. All that history and all that insanity, and we've got 10 folks who've actually viewed that video. So thank you so much, guys. It really means a lot, more so than I can ever tell you, because why do we even bother to say hello? Anyways, And then Katie Lowen says, this was an awesome episode, you guys. I think Katie Lowen is a guy, though. I'm not sure. Somebody can figure it out. It could be like using another handle, or Katie could be a guy's name. You know, a lot of guys and girls have the same names now. Put your pronouns out there. Everybody loves you. This was an awesome episode, you guys. It was a real treat to see you two finally in the same room, chopping it up, making each other laugh. Arm wrestling rematch soon. So, I know that Dan would like an arm wrestling rematch soon, but you guys don't understand what it felt like to have his hand in mine, and he was about to crush me into the wooden table. So I'm not looking for a rematch anytime soon. Thanks, Dan, for not making me look bad in front of the whole country or the 8 people that watched the video. Stephen Kassoon, if we don't get a comment from him he'll kill me. And he wrote this. I'm not sure I got the quote right, buddy. I just wrote what you typed, but I'm afraid it doesn't sound right. So anyways, he says, JFK once said, by the way, John F. Kennedy for all you millennials, effort and courage are not enough with purpose and direction. I wonder if it means to be without purpose and direction. But anyways, I remember that when I see this collection, the money, time, effort, and consistency needed to get a collection like this is unreal. Thank you for recognizing that. You're such an astute kid, and I love you for it, and I love you for following us. Because folks have no idea. I've said so many times in these podcasts with Dan, this is a job. This is a job. Dan will tell you, because he came here and the poor guy did work for a week in helping me get this together. So it does mean a lot that you actually recognize it. And Stephen, I'm now adding you to the list of the 3 people of the 10 people. I said 8. It's actually 10 that viewed the video and actually had something nice to say. Thank you so much. And then I did ask in that podcast, I'll finish up by this. Boy, do you learn stuff. When you ask the hard questions, you get the hard answers. So I said in the podcast, as I stood up and told Dan Norton to get on the other side of the table so people could look at my profile and tell me which side was my best. And do you know that every single person, including Stephen Kassoon, said the second side is definitely the best side, guys? So thank you for making me feel horrible about my right side and feel really good about my left side.
Other way around.
What?
Right? Was it not the other way around?
It was not. It was because I was sitting like this.
Okay.
And the second thing, so they all saw this side, which is over here, which is my left side. So guys, I appreciate it that all of you at least were consistent in telling me that if I'm going to do like, what is that play, Phantom of the Opera? I'm going to know which side to wear the mask on. Okay. Dan, my comments are done. I want to move right into the drawing winner. Are you ready?
I have a few other things
then
saying comments.
Say whatever you want. Don't let me bully over you. I'm not going to just run over you. You take your time.
Well, we did, obviously, because we did the podcast with Dan, we didn't address comments in that episode. And the episode before that was our grading controversy special, of which there were a ton of comments on that one. There's a lot of really cool discussion of grading in the comments. I'm not going to read out stuff from that one, but go check. You can read through all that. There's so many cool opinions. We may do, again, another grading special later on. If we do, we'll talk about a load of those there. But that also means we haven't even done comments from our January 19th episode. So there's a couple of comments I'm going to just highlight from that real quick. What's that face for? Anyway, we have Keith Bowie, longer comment, but just said, is there a list somewhere of all variants needed to complete a master set? So that was actually something I was working on as well while I was at David's place. Bulbapedia is a great resource. They're sometimes missing some cards, though. But as I was going through David's stuff and going through all of my notes, I was messaging Nathan, who runs the card side of Bulbapedia. I was messaging him everything that I found that was missing from that. So hopefully within at least the next couple of weeks, between me and Nathan, we can get everything up to date. Because he wasn't able to add everything straight away, but I was using our message chat as like just as a list of what I knew needed to be added. So hopefully between me and Nathan, we're going to get that all sorted. So that's the best place to check there. Your average player said, with the advancements and innovations in VR and online experiences, would you ever be interested in creating an online museum of your collection? Clear scans of all of your cards available for the whole world to see. That would be cool. I know we did briefly talk about the in-person museum while I was there, David, and you talked about security issues and stuff. I think that money would be the big factor there, because it would be an absolute ton of money to have to put into it. If you're talking, not just looking at scans. If you're talking like a VR headset kind of, you can walk around the virtual museum kind of thing. There's a lot of time and money has to go into setting that up. I wouldn't even know where to start. You'd have to hire a team on that. It is a cool idea, though. It's definitely something that I think you should at least keep in the back of your mind, David, as an alternative to having a physical museum, because I know you've for a long time talked about wanting to have a physical museum to raise money for charity and stuff. But that's something to think about, I think.
Well, and I'll just say something about that then. So, again, nobody ever comments, because when you got 10 people that watch the videos that we do, I love you, all 10 of you, then there's no reason people, how lucky we have to get, statistically speaking, that somebody's got a background in VR and augmented reality and all the rest of it. But it is a fantastic idea. And as Dan said, the only way I'd ever do anything with my cards with respect to museum type of stuff is if I could generate money for charity. And so it's got to be a self kind of running endeavor where the costs are sort of built in. It costs so much, but you can make it back, because as much as people think that I'm extremely wealthy, I am not. So it has to be something that's sort of self-sustaining. Obviously, what I always wanted to do is I wanted a physical type of museum where people could walk through, and you might pay sort of an admission fee, and all of that goes to charity. Well, then I'm reading last night, and I'm gauging up on the news, because I like to do that before we do the podcast. And I read last night that one of the shops in Vegas, I think it was in Vegas if I'm not mistaken, was broken into yesterday, and the entirety of the entire shop, of entireness, the cash registers, the cases, every single card, the entirety of the shop was destroyed. And folks can't imagine the kind of destruction and devastation it is to people that are in that business, because it's like when my uncle and aunt were robbed when I was a kid, and they didn't just steal things. They opened the refrigerator, took the food out, ate it, and then smeared it all over the walls. Hard to recover from that. So that's the problem. There's no way to securely do a physical place in my mind without having to worry about it 24/7. But I love this other idea. And so if there's anybody that says, hey, we can help you with that, and we might be able to get a sponsor or something, and I'm glad to do it. And everybody that was part of it or could look at it or whatever might be able to do a small donation that we could give to charities, I'd always be up for something like that.
Yeah, it would be cool to look into it. I mean, maybe it could start as, a website that gets created where we just show scans of every card in your collection, talk about them. It's a possibility, and then from there, it expands into potential virtual reality style stuff. It's a long-term project to keep in mind. Right. Last one I want to highlight from this video is from Gaknak. I'm just going to highlight this because it's loads of compliments to me. I've been watching Dan for years, and in a lot of ways, he was an inspiration for a lot of my favorite collection pieces. His English versus set video and 2013 World's Trophy video from probably an actual decade ago had me looking for those cards for many years of my life. I now have 2 English versus cards and a 2013 number 3 trainer, so you can say for sure that I never gave up. Thank you guys for being a positive force in the hobby in many ways. I'd honestly love to see some of those videos from 10 years ago, like Versus Set, Stadium Challenge Deoxys, or other informative videos that inspire new collectors. Maybe an update with the new production quality you guys have today, so more people can learn about the vast wealth of knowledge that Dan has. It's always been something that's been on the back burner of just maybe updating those videos again. I just feel like I'm still working on improving my production quality in my own mind. I'm learning a lot of stuff still. Like every episode that I'm editing, I learn a little bit of new stuff, and I feel like I'm still improving. So I feel like I don't feel like I'm at the point yet where I think, okay, my production quality is at a high enough level where I want to make a jump into redoing all these videos and, making the higher quality things come out like that. So potentially something in the future once I feel a bit more comfortable with where I'm at in terms of production quality, or I start making enough money to hire an editor and we can make something really good. But that's a long-term goal for the channel. So don't expect that anytime soon, but I'm not saying never on that one.
Just keep adding things to your to-do list, Dan. That makes a lot of sense. The more you add on, the more that your shoulders are weighted down, the more you're going to get depressed and nothing's going to get done. By the way, I love the idea of updating the videos just because I wouldn't want to watch a video back there. But back then, as far as how great your information was, but you look like you're about 12 years old. Who's going to believe a 12-year-old that has any, idea of the comments and stuff? So, but it's great. Yeah, we can just look past the youthful face and actually hope that there's something worthwhile being said.
I think I was only about 17 or 18 when I started doing stuff. I guess on this channel, I would have been 22, 23 when I made the first videos. But my first YouTube videos ever which I don't think exist anymore, or they're privated somewhere because an old account got hacked. I was probably only about 17, 18. Last thing in the collection section, in the comment section, as well as doing that video of the trophies, we sent around I put the picture of all of the trophy cards together in a few groups. We had a pretty amazing response in Burbank City and on Twitter. There was a lot of people talking about it, Instagram too. One of the biggest comments was people thought this must have been a collaborative effort to get this photo. You know, we talked about it. We talked about it on here. I know I talked to you personally, blurring the lines between what I've said to you on here and not. Of people got together at a convention about a year ago with their snap cards, and they put together a set of those 10 snap cards because I think a total of about 7 or 8 people all brought the 1 or 2 that they had, and they all had the different ones, and they got them all together. So a lot of people seem to initially think that that was what had happened here. It was just we coordinated with everyone who owned whatever years, and they brought them. But nope, obviously it's entirely David's collection. And I'll have that photo on screen for you again now, just so you can all bask in its glory once again. But thank you to everyone who did comment on that on whatever social media platforms you saw it on, and to all the people who shared and reposted it everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. And the only people that really knew that it was just my collection, were Dan and the 10 of you that watched the podcast. So thanks, guys. You guys are always in the know. Although from now on, if you guys are going to be the only ones watching, we're probably going to have to go to Patreon. Okay, Dan, can I do the drawing winners at some point here? Because we're 52 minutes in, and right now Stephen Kassoon fell asleep.
Yep, you can very definitely go to the giveaway or the drawing.
So, who won last week's giveaway?
So it has been so long since we did a drawing that nobody even knows what it's supposed to be about. I could have made something up and just said that everybody started texting me information. Nobody would have no. They wouldn't text me information. They'd be jumping in my DMs. But this actually had to do with your favorite Pokemon. That's what I found when I went looking back out there. So we had a lot of interesting ones. I just want to list out a couple of comments, and then I'll tell you who won. So Craig Holmes said Porygon was his favorite Pokemon because it was completely different than the others at the time, and managed to send, I love this, managed to send an attack through the TV into the real world, giving a load of kids seizures. Dan Norton, tell people what Craig was referring to, because that's so interesting.
What he's referring to is some very unfair Porygon slander over the past few years. So during the initial season of the Pokemon anime in Japan, there was an episode that featured Porygon, and during that episode there was a lot of rapidly flashing lights, which did cause some seizures with kids in Japan. It caused the episode to be pulled. I don't believe they've ever aired it again in Japan. It was never aired outside of Japan in the original runs. But it wasn't Porygon's fault, because Porygon didn't appear in the anime again for the longest time. I don't even know if it has yet. I know that even after it got its evolutions, Porygon 2 and Porygon Z, they didn't appear in the anime either for the longest time. But the flashing lights were caused by Pikachu doing a Thunderbolt attack on some missiles, which caused them to explode. Porygon was there, and the name of the episode had Porygon in it, but it wasn't Porygon's fault.
Isn't that interesting how it's always going to be the Pikachus and Charizards that are insulated because of their weight they carry in the hobby, and lowly Porygon's going to get all the heck for it? That's ridiculous. Just hearing the story, I think I possibly threw up a bit in my mouth.
Sacrificial lamb of Porygon to take the heat away from Pikachu.
Right. Okay, a few more people that said who their favorite was. Poke Power-Ups. Ryan said he liked Suicune because he liked the look of it. Codes and Cards Pro liked Mew because it was connected to the personality given to the character in the first movie. Stephen Kassoon said Venusaur. When I was a child, we started playing the Fire Red Leaf Green game, and me, my brother, and my cousin all rolled a die, and I got the lowest number 2, which meant I had to pick whichever starter the other 2 didn't. And that was Venusaur, and ever since that it grew on me and has remained my favorite. Sievert Smedsrud said Greninja and Minior. He can't choose which one. He always loved Greninja as a child because of the bond he had with Ash, and Minior because he used to play the competitive VGC, and he was so strong with using Shell Smash to exchange the defense for attack. Jeffrey Lamar Kaiser liked Ninetales, Jeffrey Hurtgen Jolteon, Tommy Vu Charmander, nostalgia as a child, choosing him first and never forgot his first appearance on the show. TCG Cross Collector Bulbasaur, always been since his first contact with the franchise as a kid. Quilly Bear Cards Bulbasaur. Nostalgia for the Squirtle Squad episode of the original anime, And he always started the original games with Squirtle and Blastoise as the end of that line. Nathan Portel, Mimikyu, such a cool twist to a classic, he said. Ponga Collectibles, Lugia. As a kid, I loved the Pokemon 2000 movie, and Lugia played a large role in the movie. Those were kind of some of the things that people put in as far as who they liked. And the winner of that drawing is Nathan Portel, NPP KMN, NP Pokemon, Nathan Portel Pokemon with Mimikyu. And so I will be sending something out, or I will not. Depends on if he gives me an address or he doesn't. Depends on if I actually say I received the address or I don't. Or possibly I don't find anything in my 5,000K box because Dan sitting on the ground may have just taken it, pilfered it all the way in his knapsack on his back on the way back to Ohio. Okay, now for this podcast, congratulations, Stephen Kassoon. I would have purposely made you the winner, just so you know, just to get you off my back. But I know you're on pilgrimage right now, buddy, and I hope you're enjoying New York and having a wonderful time. And we're looking forward to you getting safely back to your country of origin as soon as possible. Okay, giveaway details for this podcast. I'm going to tell you what it is right now. Since we're almost an hour in, why wait, okay? But I'm going to give you what you need to know. You have to get into my DMs. You have to respect my DMs for both what they are and what they're not. Does that make sense? All I'm asking for is respect, folks. You put the requested information in there. You do not put it in the video comments, but you do leave a comment on the video. If you don't leave a comment on the video, you are out of luck, okay? Also, if you share the podcast, God, why am I so loud? Stop talking so loud. You're not going to have a voice, and it's not that important. Nobody cares. What are you doing it for emphasis? You can't be doing it for emphasis. Nobody's listening to you. So stop emphasizing. Just be human and be a human person. All right. So anyways, if you share the podcast or you share one of my daily Instagram posts along with a comment on the podcast, you get an additional drawing entry, which those often come in handy to win. All right. So here's what you have to put in the thing this week. I buried it down here. Okay. Here's what it is. You have to direct message me. That's what DM stands for. If you're one of my older fans, I've got a tremendous number of the elderly ladies that follow me. How you guys doing? I'm a kidder. Stop. Dan, stop it. You just DM me and you tell me that you only watch the podcast because of Dan. Remember Gaknak Fazul? And he told Dan all those complimentary things? I want you guys to, in my post, say, we only watch because of Dan. It's not because of you, David. And then I want you to tell me specifically why you watch because of Dan. By the way, insulting me is not necessary or mandatory, but will be tolerated in this one particular instance. Okay? And that's it. That's all you got to do for this based on this. Dan, I need to go on to deal of the podcast. Can I just be done with this now and get right on the deal of the podcast?
You can get right on deal of the podcast. Did you mention that your Instagram is dperson1? You sometimes forget to do that. It's all in the description, but dperson1 on Instagram is where you need to go to send him that deal.
Thanks, Dan. DPERSIN1. That's how you contact me, either if you're having a nervous breakdown or you want to enter some kind of drawing, or you want to criticize me or tell me how good Dan is.
It's time to find out David's deal of the episode.
The deal of the podcast this week's a little interesting, okay? Because I can't get into the Dan. So here's what Dan did. He sat down with all my boxes when he was here. You hear a theme going on here. And he kept nothing in alphabetical order. It was like all the cards were on the floor, cement floors. He didn't put down mats or anything. Everything is crazy. And then he puts it all back in the box. I can't find anything. So to find a quantity of anything is impossible. So all you're going to have at your disposal this week, folks, is 5 sets of cards. There are 5 folks who can possibly take advantage of this particular offer. And what I'm going to put out there is a 2012 Scyther Pokemon League stamped promo set. You're going to get all places 1st through 4th from this set. So there's stamps, 1st place, 2nd place, 3rd place, 4th place. These sets are brand new from cellophane wrap. They have a little bit of a curvature, but it goes away when you stick it in a binder page or a holder, whatever. And so they're brand new from cellophane packs that were open. They're not sealed because multiple sets come in a single cellophane wrap, so we got to open and take them out. I'm going to call them near mint condition because occasionally there's some white on the back corner. That's how the production was. Not very often, though, maybe occasionally. And because you guys like to know the wholly on this, eBay's lowest price all in for the 4-card set is about $175. And my price for the 4-card set is $125, including shipping. And you have to, as always, PayPal friends and family me, or Zelle. If you don't want to do one of those two things, I'm sorry, but you cannot avail yourself of the deal. I know this one will go quite quickly. I only have 5 sets available. Thank you for your kind consideration. Dan, do you have these cards?
I honestly don't know. That's XY era, so I don't have my binders fully set up for XY era. I know I have quite a lot of the first through fourth place cards. I don't know if I actually have the full set of Scyther or not.
Okay, I just wondered if you do or didn't. All right. Dan, I'm ready to move on to Trainer Deck A or B as we pick up steam towards the end of this video.
Yeah, I suppose we can do a Trainer Deck A or B. It has been a month, so hopefully you've written some good questions.
I have no good questions, Dan, but I don't care. You still have to be put through the pain of Trainer Deck A or B.
It's time to play Trainer Deck A or Trainer Deck B.
All right, well, whenever you're ready, Dave, just start throwing stupid questions at me.
Okay, Dan has to give me an answer. He doesn't have to give me an answer, guys. That's the rules. He's only got 10 seconds to provide an explanation, which is not mandatory. If he exceeds 10 seconds or doesn't provide an explanation, even though one is not required, he could possibly be banned from going to Worlds in Hawaii in August of this year. By the way, I don't know if Dan's going to let me say this. I don't care. I found it out. I looked it up myself, and I'm going to say it, Dan, because it's out there in the public media, and I love to cause controversy. Dan can't say anything. He's not allowed to say anything because he's a spouse of a person that works for Pokemon. But I happened to look up some news, and do you know that it was released that the 2026 Pokemon World Championships, there was an article put out there that somebody did some research, some insider information provision, and it's actually slated to be in San Francisco in 2026, based on the fact that somebody saw a whole block of rooms booked by Pokemon for that August timeframe. So that's not good when you want to get to 2025 and have a big surprise of the fact that next year is going to be in San Francisco and it's already going to be out there to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like someone at the convention center might be getting fired for leaking that to the newspaper. If they wanted to be really helpful, they could tell us what date it would be. Like, that's what we do. Pokemon still hasn't officially released the date for Hawaii yet. So that's the information we need to know, is we need to know the dates. The city matters less because we'll always know the city a year in advance, but they keep pushing it later and later to give us the actual dates for Worlds.
Yeah, I think that's because a lot of Hawaii's hotels have bed bugs, and that's the situation. They're trying to figure out how to deal with that. Oh, wait a minute. That's not true. That was Las Vegas for the Super Bowl. My bad, guys. Okay, here we go. Trainer Deck A or B. Dan,
Yeah.
Ready, set, or go?
Go. Quickly, get through this.
Dan, East or West?
East. I live in the East now, and I'm from the Northeast, so East.
Dan, candy canes or candy corn?
Canes. Because candy corn is horrid.
But canes are great, right, Dan?
They're not great. They're fine.
Dan, are you a black licorice guy or a red licorice guy as I tangent for just a moment?
Red licorice.
Yeah, you have no complexity to your palate. Dan, heuristic or simplistic?
Simplistic.
That about sums it up. Yeah, that works just fine. Thanks, Dan. Dan, Google or Safari?
Google.
So predictable. I am so sick of it. Step out of your comfort zone and find a new friend, buddy. Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Neither. I hate them
You
both.
can't pick neither, Dan. You got to pick the lesser of two evils.
Zuckerberg, I guess, is the lesser of two evils.
Dan, trap shooting or crap shooting?
What's trap shooting?
It's a form of gun shooting ammunition towards little targets that are flying in the air.
Okay, and by crap shooting, do you mean just like talking crap amongst each other, or do you mean at the casino shooting craps?
No, I mean what you do on a daily basis every time you put out a podcast, shooting the crap.
That one then.
Okay. Dan, nerd, dork, geek, or freak?
Geek, I think. That's what I prefer to be known as.
You know what? I can say nothing else. That's the perfect answer to that one. Dan,
The weird thing
RSV.
is, slight tangent. In England, basically, the meanings of what people think of for nerd and geek are reversed. Because I know in America, geek is seen as like the really like school smart mathematician kind of people, and then nerds are seen as like the loving science fiction, pop culture, that kind of thing. In England, it's completely the other way around. Like the nerds are the people who do well in school, and the geeks are all the ones into Star Trek.
Dan, I think you might want to start looking at making up your own maybe dictionary of UK to USA translations and ways that people can better understand foreign folks like yourself. I think it could allow for a, sort of a better nationalized discussion of how we can better get along with our foreign neighbors. Dan, RSV, COVID, or the flu?
What was the first one you said?
RSV.
Okay, let's go with the flu.
Do you not know what RSV is?
No, I don't know what that stands for.
Well, that's the respiratory virus. So that's what everybody gets when you
Okay.
get the virus that hits your lungs and stuff. So,
Oh.
so yeah, so good. Apparently, even with a guy that's got damaged lungs, he hasn't done the full set of research on what he should know
Hey,
to protect himself.
I didn't get a virus in my lungs. One of them just burst.
Dan, it's not what happened. It's what could happen, my friend. You can't go back. We got to live in the future, buddy. Dan, text or email?
Text, generally. It's just quicker. I mean, in reality, as you know, neither. I use Messenger for everything, but text out of the two.
What I love is you've been here for 47 years and you're not even 30 something and you still haven't moved any of your cultural, typicalities over to the USA. So that's fine. I'm like, does the guy have a phone number to text? No, guys, he doesn't. You got to do the Facebook Messenger and you got to go through Laura. He doesn't have a driver's license, which we'll get to in a minute. It's all horrific, guys. I don't know what he's even doing in the country. It's, this whole
I do have a phone
C3,
number.
D3, and B3 visa thing. When Trump is elected, he's probably going home. Dan,
I do have a phone number. It's just easier to reach me through Messenger.
Shaman or shame on you?
Shaman. I love Shaman. It's a really cute Pokemon. Little hedgehog.
Okay.
I
Thank
like
goodness.
the land form. I prefer to the sky form.
Okay, of course. Yeah, that's a lot of shame on yous for you too. Dan, Slay King or Slay a King?
Slacking.
You can't say it. There's no slacking. There's no C in it.
But it's slacking. Like he's slacking off. That's
You're
'cause he's
slacking
lazy.
off. You're slacking off. What you're doing again is you're putting the UK form of spelling and pronunciation in here. There is no C. So the A automatically becomes long before a K, and you can choose to pronounce it any way you want, but you're just simply wrong.
Okay, Slay King then.
Possibly I could be wrong. I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll hear in the comments, especially from Gaknak Fazul, who always says you know better, and everybody that's going to DM me about why they want to watch podcasts because of you. Dan, Lotad, and I probably said it wrong. Lotad, Lotade, or Lojack.
Lotad. I'm pretty sure you said it right.
Which one do you want to pick?
Lotad.
Okay, good job, buddy. Dan, Armor Fossil or Skull Fossil?
I don't remember which one of those goes to which. I'll go Armor Fossil. I know that they're the two platinum, Diamond Pearl Platinum era fossils. I just don't remember which one goes to which Pokemon.
All right, we can't expect you to remember everything, Dan. There's so much clutter going on in that amazing brain of yours. Dan, Life Herb or Herbalife?
Life Herb.
Okay, Herbalife is a kind of a multi-level
Pyramid
marketing.
Pyramid
you know what
scheme.
it is? Yeah. So
it's a
Dan,
pyramid scheme.
but Dan, you're still not working. Don't rule anything out.
I'm
Dan,
ruling out pyramid schemes because they take all of your money and you don't make anything.
Okay, fine.
Anyway.
You're not making anything right now. Dan, Wurmple or Purple Nurple?
Wurmple.
Dan, were you bullied as a kid? Did a lot of people give you Purple Nurples?
I didn't get a lot of purple nurples, no. I don't think that's really a thing in the UK.
Oh, well, there we go again. You see, I am so sick of your pontificating for how much better your societal norms were than ours here in this country, maybe you should take a flight back, Dan, and just get comfortable with mom and dad in the old house.
Right. Well, my parents definitely don't live together.
Okay, bad. Sorry. You can visit occasionally. Sorry. I didn't mean to bring up something that was hurtful, Dan. My bad. Dan, driving with a valid license or driving with an invalid license?
Driving with a valid license, which just because I don't have a US license doesn't mean I don't have a driving license. I have a UK license. I need to take the US test, but Laura does the driving currently, but I do need to take the test and get my US license as well.
Man, it's good to have a bucket list when you're 30 something and you've been in the country a decade already. Dan, going for broke or going broke?
Going broke. That's what I'm doing.
I think so, Dan, because going for broke for you might actually just lead to going broke. Why just not be more realistic about it? Dan,
as I said to my friend Jordan, I think on one of our Quest for 20 podcasts, I have enough money to last me the rest of my life as long as I die tomorrow. And then so every day that I wake up, I just need to figure out how to make it one more day.
Well, there's your perfect lead into my next question. Selling one of your collection cards before you take your last breath, or taking your last breath having not sold a single card from your collection?
The second one. I'm keeping this collection till I die, and then someone will do something with it. It's not my problem at that point.
Yeah, I think you and Laura have such a wonderful relationship. She's just going to put it out and let the dogs enjoy it. Dan, silver, gold, or platinum?
Platinum.
All right, Dan. That leads us into our highlighted cards of the week, which I asked Dan what we should do this week because guy's not pulling his weight on the podcast. And he goes, David, we'll just do platinum. He's like, because it's a different era, but it's not a different era. It's part of the DP era, but it's not part of the DP era. And I got so confused by all the stuff he was muddling out of his mouth that we'll just move on to that. So, Dan, you want to put a segue in here and then we'll move on?
Yep.
And now for our highlighted cards of the week.
All right, so yes, as David said, we're talking about the set Platinum from the TCG today. One of the reasons I picked this one is because, we did Diamond and Pearl the last time we did one of these, and we've looked at kind of starts of eras. Sometimes a lot of stuff changes. But Platinum is a weird one. Like David just said, it's sort of part of the Diamond and Pearl era, but it's sort of not. Generally, one of the ways is that I think of eras is, do they reset the Black Star promo number? Like David, you'll at least know this. During the WotC era, they had numbered promos 1 to 53 with the Black Stars. When they got to Nintendo, they then started the numbering system again, went up to 40. Then we started getting the Diamond and Pearl promos, which were DP. And then right now we've got SV, which is the Scarlet Violet Black Star promos. So Platinum, didn't.
Wait. And then there was HGSS, right?
There was a lot in between. I'm just saying that's what we've got now.
Okay,
there was HGSS, then Black and White, then XY, then Sun and Moon, then Sword and Shield, and now Scarlet Violet.
Okay.
So Platinum, they didn't reset the promo numbering over here. They just kept with the DP promo numbering. But weirdly, in Japan, they did. So Japan doesn't just have DP as their Black Star promos. They have DP-P, which is Diamond and Pearl, but then they have DPT-P, which is a full new set of Black Star promos, which they reset with Platinum. So Japan seemed to treat it a lot more like a fully brand new era than we did over here. But it does show off a lot of differences in the set. There's a lot of new stuff. This was where SP Pokemon came in for the first time, they were kind of similar to how Pokemon were in the Versus set in Japan. They were basic versions of Pokemon that weren't normally basic, and there was a lot of mechanics and stuff that interacted only with the Pokemon SP. There was some overlap with the Diamond and Pearl era, so you might know that in Stormfront, they had that secret rare set of Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard, plus 3 shiny Pokemon as kind of secrets you could pull from the set. Platinum continued that off with another 3 shiny Pokemon that continued the same numbering and had 3 more reprints of classic cards as part of the set. So over here, at least, it does have more of an overlap with the Diamond and Pearl era.
Wasn't so there's 4 sets if we just look at Platinum something, right? Aren't there 4 Platinum era sets, if we call it that?
Yeah, so it's Platinum, Rising Rivals, Supreme Victors, and Arceus are the sets that have Platinum something as the name.
Okay, and do you care if I call it Arceus? I just like to call it something different than you. So if you call it Arceus, I'll call it Arceus. If you call it Arceus, I'll call it Arceus. Does that seem reasonable?
Sure, why not?
Okay. So Dan, explain to me then, if you're saying I want to understand this 12 card set at the end, that's this SH4, SH5, SH6. I'm
Yeah.
under the impression that there was three of those shining or SH cards or whatever they call them from SH1 to SH12 in
Yeah.
the four platinum sets. Are you saying that's not the case? There was something that started prior to them?
Yeah, that's not the case. The first three are in the previous set, Stormfront, which is the last of the Diamond and Pearl era. And then Rising Rivals didn't get three of them because Rising Rivals had its own subset, which I think we've talked about before. It's the Rotom subset, the five different forms of Rotom, and Charon's Choice is the supporter. That was another set that was unique just to Rising Rivals. Rising Rivals still did have three Pikachu reprints to fit into that classic reprint thing that started with Stormfront, but it didn't have the three shiny Pokemon. I will say in the Japanese sets, those shiny Pokemon were numbered just in with the regular sets. In Japan, they didn't have the SH subset numbering. So in Japan, it wasn't as clear that it was still linked to Stormfront. It was just a few things that started in Stormfront and continued. It wasn't as though they were part of that same numbering system. But when they did it over here, they separated them out.
And again, this whole idea, again, we've covered this so many times during the podcast, but I always find it so interesting. The idea of where these cards come in and how they're separated and which sets they're with or aren't with, it's all derived in some fashion coming from the Japanese sets, right?
Yeah, but there was a lot. I think in this era especially, there was a lot of Japan was doing where they did a set and they did two decks, or they did a dual pair of decks that went with the set. And those dual pair of decks weren't reprints of the cards from the set. Like when we get decks and stuff now, there's maybe a couple of variants in it, maybe one Black Star promo, but that's about it. Everything is totally taken from the set with the same numbering and stuff. In Japan, the decks had all of their own numbering, and a lot of them were totally unique cards. So basically, all of those got lumped in to the English set when they got released.
Do you think, just a quick tangent here, I'm always curious, do you think that the variants that come in the decks that are issued here, non-hollow variants, whatever it might be, even in build and battles or whatever, do you think that those are specifically issued to try to make those decks more collectible? Are they issued since they really don't change the cards and it's just a hollow or non-hollow kind of thing? Do you believe that they're specifically put in there to try to make those more collectible and more purchasable by Pokemon collectors?
So I think when they used to do the theme decks and they do, a cracked ice foil or something on the front of it, I think that was the intent of that card. But when they're making the non-foil versions, I think it's a printing thing. So, if you buy one of these decks now, normally your EX card, your promo card, will be in the plastic at the front, and then the other 59 cards will be in the deck box. And I think it's just a printing thing because they would have to print foils and non-foils on separate sheets. So I think it's just a way of printing the entire rest of the deck on the same sheet. It gets cut up, it goes straight into that deck box during production, rather than having to have it where, say, 55 of the cards go in there and then you have to pull 4 cards from another sheet to put those in the deck box as well. I think the non-hollow thing is just simplicity for that.
Makes sense. I always like when we talk about these older sets because, again, maybe the second most underappreciated part of Pokemon card collecting outside of our good friends, the Jumbos, are the reverse hollows. So can you talk about, I noticed when I was thumbing through the binder prior to the podcast, these are the type of reverse hollows that are the ones that would be most easily scratched because I guess the surface has more hollow area. Can you talk about that and what that the fact that folks still maybe don't look to collect those, and if they do, how difficult they can be to find in good condition?
Yeah, it's your standard kind of a mirror foil reverse that started with the E series back when Watsy did it. I think the first couple of EX era sets also just have that mirror reverse foil, and then they started moving into alternate foils. But this style came back with Diamond and Pearl and lasted all the way up to Black and White, and then with emerging powers, they started doing different patterns and stuff in it. But when it's just a full solid mirror foil. I'm not saying it gets scratched easier, but even the most minor scratch will show up unbelievably on these cards. If you look at something where there's a busy pattern going on in the reverse holo, like you see with the later black and white sets where they have all the energy symbols, very, very minor surface scratch isn't going to show up very well because it's going to get lost in all of that design. But when it is just a completely flat mirror foil, any imperfection is going to show up as soon as you tilt the card in any way. You're going to see that break in the mirror shine. So while it's not necessarily that these cards get damaged more often, it's that more minor damage is going to show up and it's going to ruin eye appeal of the cards.
If for those of you that the 10 of you that watch, and gosh, we're so thankful. Could you put something in the comments that tells us if you ever collect a master set from this type of era, from back in the platinum era, whatever, and do you consider reverse holos to be a part of the set? Do you actually include them? And if not, maybe you're trying to build a set? How easy, how difficult it is to find these cards in decent shape? I'd love to hear anything from any of you that have any experience with any of that, because again, I just think, and again, I suppose I'm biased, but it seems like cheating for people that aren't out looking, if they're going to complete a full set, to look for those reverse holos. And I realize that a lot of people know it's not the easiest thing to find them in great condition. So I don't mind condition at all. I think if folks say, hey, I just will like light play, is fine for me as well. But I still think they should be part of the set. And I'm just wondering how you all feel about that. So
I would say I wouldn't consider it cheating. People can do whatever they want. If people just want to have regular sets in their collection, that's fine. The only thing that ever is a bit of a pet peeve for me is when people say that they have a master set, but it's not. I've seen people, we've talked about this a million times, where it's just people will put more and more qualifiers as to why their thing is actually a master set. And it's like, oh no, master set doesn't include this, master set doesn't include that, so I do have the master set. And it's like, you don't have to have a master set. You don't have to keep putting these qualifiers on. Just say, I have a full set, or I have just a complete regular set. It's also fine to just have that.
Yeah, and in this case, a full master set of this would be everything that you can get from the box, right?
Yeah.
Which is from the booster box, which is all the regular cards and all the holo cards and all the reverse holo cards. And then there's about 10 different variants that come out of other products that aren't necessarily available, aren't going to be available, like pre-release stamps and stuff from collection boxes, whatever. And then I just wonder, there is one well-known error card, Dan, but I guess technically we really shouldn't call that error card, although it is to me part of the set, just because it's like the other cards.
Yeah.
I guess technically we shouldn't call that extra Dialga card 122 of 127 part of a necessary to have a full master set. Would you agree?
Yeah, generally it's error cards are in this weird thing where I've always wanted to get errors that are repeated like that, but it feels like when you're talking master set, you have to look at intentional release kind of thing, which is why we've said, the pre-release Raichu, neither of us would say, oh, you can't finish a base set master set without pre-release Raichu, because that's very much in the no official release column. And then when we did Diamond and Pearl, we had that discussion about the Turtwig and the Piplup that came with the San Diego and the Chicago stamps. There's discussion that we had there, because those are very borderline on what counts as an official release and what doesn't. But then errors, it feels like there's nothing was intentional there. So it feels like that would go in a separate part of the binder for me, basically. I wouldn't put it, in number order with my variants like I do. I would always have my variants, then I'd have any errors separate.
All right, let's go one step further with that, because you've piqued my interest. So let's go with your comment here about intentionally issued. All right. So I would argue that the Munchlax and the Piplup and stuff was intentionally issued, albeit not in very much of a quantity. But let's skip that for a moment. Let's put that aside, since that's a bit more complicated. So this Dialga level X 122 of 127 corrected version, right? There was a error and a corrected version.
Well, weirdly, it wasn't that was an error and then they corrected it. Okay. Initially, there was only corrected versions. It was a much later product, which I'll talk about a bit more, where the error showed up. So the error Dialga you cannot get from booster packs. So later, like years after they released Platinum, were well into the Heart Gold, Soul Silver era, they released 2 collection boxes. One was based around Dialga and Palkia, and one was based around Darkrai and Cresselia. And what they had in them was they had a jumbo card, which was, the legends that come from the Heart Gold, Soul Silver era, where it was 2 cards together. They had a jumbo card of both of the cards together as artwork on one jumbo, but instead of including the regular legend pieces as the 2 promos in the box, they had the level X's. So the Darkrai Cresselia one had Darkrai level X, Cresselia level X. The Dialga Palkia one had the jumbo of Dialga Palkia Legend, but it had the Dialga G level X and Palkia G level X in the front of them. Now, these cards were just intended to be exactly the same as from the sets, as from Platinum, and I think it was Great Encounters that Darkrai Cresselia was from. But it was from that box that some of the Dialgas were errors. The other 3 of those promos are, not even promos, the other 3 of those cards are exactly the same as sets. It's just some amount of the Dialgas were misprinted in that much, much later print run. So this isn't one where there was a mistake and they corrected it. This was always right, and then there was a mistake made later on.
Yeah. I don't know. I was trying to think that through because it's, is that different than a, like it was an intentional printing though, but I guess it wouldn't be an intentional printing if it was an error. So,
correct. So they intentionally reprinted the cards for these boxes, but we'll talk about what it is actually. It's the energy symbols in the weakness and resistance are the wrong colors. And what that's caused by, one of the colors is missing from it. Out of your, was it cyan, yellow, magenta, black? I think that's still the 4 colors they use as printing plates, but as they print cards, they don't just print the full card. It goes on in different layers and different colors, and it's on those 2 energy symbols. One of the color layers is missing from some of the print run. That's how it caused that error. So it's definitely, there's no way it was intentional. It was just some printing layer of some part of the printing process ran out of ink, and it caused this visual error on the card.
Okay. I'd like to retract any comments I made that were possibly dealing with intentionality and just move right on past that. Folks that are watching, please pretend I said nothing that was of any interest. It really never is anyways. Okay. Dan, I'm all done with Platinum. I love the set. I think it's a cool set.
Well, we're not done with Platinum because we haven't even done the variants yet.
Wait, I didn't know you were going to do all the variants. Sure, no problem.
Yeah, I'll run through them. But other thing to mention on error cards is there is another error card in the set.
Oh, okay, wait. Just stop. When were you going to tell me, on the next trip out?
Let me explain. There is an error card in the set, but this one was never corrected. So this again affects Dialga, but it's the regular Dialga from within the set rather than the level X version. In fact, I think there's about 3 Dialgas in the set. It's the one that's normally non-foil. Card number 23, I believe it is. That's a metal type card, but every reverse holo copy was printed as a colorless Pokemon rather than metal. So it had the colorless symbol in the top, and it had the white design rather than the steel gray design. But that one was never corrected. So your reverse set of Platinum will have that error card in it because there's no corrected reverse holo of that card. It only exists in error version.
Interesting.
So like you said, 10 variants. I'll run through them pretty quick. So we have theme deck variants, as usual. We have a non-holo Gardevoir, a Cosmos Holo Giratina, Cosmos Holo Shaman. 3 cards. Pretty simple to pick up those ones. They're theme deck ones. We then have a few different cross-hatch promos, which were league promos. Again, they get given out in huge quantities. There was Dialga G, Plus Power, and Broken Time Space. Broken Time Space, I think I've said in here before, one of my favorite cards to ever use when I was playing the game. Absolutely loved that card. Then we have the pre-release card. It was a Lucario this time. You got the regular with the pre-release stamp, plus the staff version. And then last 2, we have a Comic-Con promo from Comic-Con in San Diego. It's a Riolu. There's a regular version and a staff version. The staff version of this Riolu is a very, very rare card. I'm not sure if Laura actually has this one, and I know I spent years basically never seeing one. I finally got mine about a year ago in a big bulk purchase, but this card does not show up very often, and when it does, it goes for quite a lot. So if you're trying to do a Platinum Master set, the Staff Comic Con Riolu is going to be the big chase card you need to be going after.
Dan, was that inadvertently in the big bulk purchase? Was it just you got lucky, or did you kind of know it was coming in there, or what was the deal? Because that's kind of a cool little story.
I knew it was coming. When I say a bulk purchase, it wasn't like I was buying, bulk at 10 cents. I mean, there was a lot of stuff in the purchase. It was an auction that was ran it was some UK site a while back. A guy was selling all of his collection and decided to post it through this auction house. And I bought a few different lots from that because they almost every set he had, like every set from base set through to about black and white, I think, regular and reverse, and tons of promos, and almost all of it just went unbelievably cheap because it was this weird UK auction house that was harder to sign up for. So yeah, I bought one of those lots because there was a few cards in it that I needed, but if it was a thing where if I was getting if I needed 20% of the cards, I was just paying market value for those 20%, and then the rest of the auction was basically free, and then I was reselling it later. So it was just I picked up a few things from that just because of how cheap it was.
Well, good. That's cool, Dan. Very cool. And I know what you're talking about with that auction house situation. So that is a really it points out some of the time some of the reasons why folks should really be on top of this stuff. I'll always say the more you look, the more you find. The more time you put in, the more success you'll have in whatever you're looking for, whether or not that's continuous searches or save searches or whatever. It ends up paying off. I used to think when I was in the beginning of all this, even a decade ago, that you just couldn't find things, and if you didn't really stay on top of everything. But it's amazing how, although everything starts disappearing, it still comes out later in some different fashion. Folks have financial needs; they turn over their collections, or there's always seems to be cards that you never think are going to see again. They do come out. So, but you do have to be looking for them. So
yeah, I kept that auction house bookmarked, and I was really lucky because the same guy sold his Lord of the Rings collection a few months later, and I got like 5 foil sets of Lord of the Rings for incredibly cheap as well. It was great.
It must be nice, Dan. I mean, I don't know how you do it, how you have zero income at all, zero, nothing. And yet anything you want to buy seems attainable and inevitably purchased. I don't understand it, but it goes back to the Sugar Mama series. We need to get rock and rolling right away on that.
I'll say it's not anything I want to buy. If that had been, say, one set of Lord of the Rings foil for the same price as all of them, I wouldn't have dropped the money because I'll say I spent about $2,000 on Lord of the Rings foils, but I'm not reselling them. They're for my collection, but market value on those sets was probably about $6,000 or $7,000. Now, if just one set had come up that was worth $2,000, I wouldn't have bought it because I would have said, I can get it later. It's not a smart purchase right now to just drop $2,000. But when I'm paying a quarter of the price, a third of the price for these cards, it just seemed like too good of a deal to not try and make it work.
Dan, since you never sell a darn thing, I appreciate the statistical likelihood of you being able to sell this at any time you want, for any price you want, at any time in the future you want. But in the meantime, buddy, up the insurance as quickly as possible, just in case that the dogs do something, there's a ravaging fire coming through the area. Because since we all know you don't sell a darn thing, I don't know how you peacefully sleep with your head on the pillow at night.
I do sell stuff. I just don't sell the first copy of what's in my collection or what's in Laura's collection. We sell extras.
Sure you do. Dan. Sure. Once a year at a Columbus, Ohio show, you sell $47 and something, and then you and Laura go out and celebrate at Chili's. Dan, listen, here's the thing. Nobody realizes that when we started this podcast, I tried to get on with you. I'm like, Dan, I'm exhausted. I never do a podcast with you. You got to take me while you can get me right now. And you're like, David, I can't do it right now. I'm in the middle of dinner. I got 15 minutes to go on dinner. Gosh forbid you would ever abbreviate your dinner for me. And then every time I try to cut off a segment and say, we're done with Platinum, you're like, no, just wait. My tummy is full. I have more to say. But Dan, it's 7:04 and I haven't even started the pizza yet, okay? We just can't go on all night. We have to finish some segments for your old friend here in Las Vegas, Nevada, okay?
All right. Well, we're done with platinum now. We can finish this segment, and you can have a rant.
Okay. So you know what that means, right, Dan?
Yeah.
It means it's time for me to rant.
Oh, good. David has a rant coming on.
All right. Well, I just dropped something on the floor, and I don't like listening to the rant anyway, so I'm going to go look for that, and you do what you have to do.
Okay, Dan, you got it. So, hey guys, look, I don't, sometimes things come up. I don't know what I'm going to rant about, but this week it's pretty straightforward. Okay, as you guys know, that Dan and Laura just visited our home with my wife and I, and they stayed for 7 days. Okay. So 7 days. Yeah, exactly. My question is to you folks, how much obligation do you have to take care of guests when they come to your home? All right. And I'll give you some of the ideas what went on here. Uh, I don't think I ever want them coming again, but I don't know I'm going to ever say that to their faces. They're such wonderful people. Hopefully, they won't figure this out. Hopefully, Dan won't edit this piece. He'll never figure it out. So, number one, we are the Uber drivers, right? So, my wife goes to get them at the airport, and not only are the different terminal, they said they were going to be at Terminal 1, they're at Terminal 3, and they're carrying the largest suitcase ever created in the history of mankind. Okay? And by the way, who do you think had to carry the suitcase? Oh, my wife, when she placed it into her car, trunk, so to speak. You lift that, whatever an SUV door is, not really a trunk, but you know what I mean. Because this was after Dan tried to get Laura to lift it into the car. It's absolutely ridiculous. Okay. So then when they get home and they finally unload, guess who has the pleasure of lifting that suitcase up the stairs? There's a lot of stairs, guys. When Dan simply chose not to offer at all. There's something wrong, right? I don't want to say to Dan, my back's hurting. Okay. I am twice your age. But I carried it upstairs and I grinned and bared it because that's what you do when friends come to town, right? Sure. How about the car rental? Well, no, they couldn't rent a car. That was not going to happen at all because they didn't have any budget for Ubers as they came up with it. They had all of their money budgeted for ghost experiences, or I think they call them escape rooms. That's what all their money went to. So I had to offer to take my car around Vegas wherever they wanted to go. Well, little did I know that they never chose to accept the insurance at my car rental agency. And Laura had to drive because Dan doesn't have a valid driver's license in the States. And after two, what I'm going to call small fender benders, I questioned whether or not I would ever do this with guests again, right? It's just this reality. I can rant, but this is what happens. How about water usage, right? Oh, I don't want to be cheap. Oh, Dave, you're cheap, whatever. You think anyone bothered to tell me that Laura takes 45-minute showers? We're in a drought-ravaged area. Now, Grant, I'm going to tell you something, okay? The woman smells darn good after that long in a shower, okay? She comes out, she's got the shampoo in the hair, and she's sitting down there on the couch watching I think she was watching Dexter or something. I don't know. She loves serial killing stuff. So anyways, smells wonderful, great, but it's not like I'm not going to suffer at the end of the month when those bills come in, because I think she was showering 2 to 3 times a day, depending on how much time she spent with Dan. And the other thing, speaking of paying higher utility bills, how about heating, right? Well, our little Ohioan friends, they like to keep it super warm in the room when they go sleepy at night, okay? So how about, what do you guys sleep at night? What does your thermostat register with at night? Dan and Laura, let me give you a little heads up, 78 degrees. We have the system in the house where it's Nest and my wife can control it from her phone. Every time they would fall asleep, we kind of move the dial down or whatever. Every time we looked at it again, they'd move the dial back up. Not a care in the world, because these two people have no concept of anything when it comes to visiting friends. But you know what? We got to accept it. They're our friends. We can't say anything. We're not going to say anything. We just deal with it. And next month we go on and hopefully the bills go down, right? How about food consumption? Does that ever take place when you got friends at the house? So Laura had told me that despite Dan's many kind of weird food allergies and limitations, he could out-eat any normal human being by double. And so I'll give you an example. I basically do carryouts one night, $140 worth. I think it was Chinese food or something. I told the restaurant, after I'd watched Dan consume food for the last couple of days, I told him, do me a favor, please stay open just a little bit later, because this guy, there's a good chance that there's going to be another order coming in sooner rather than later. When he wants third or fourth portions, all I'm going to tell you guys is you just get out of this guy's way. And then there's the fighting, all right? It is so clear that Laura is the sugar mama in this relationship, but and Dan doesn't like it, so you can see that. So the constant conflict is on public display all the time. When these folks left, my wife Stephanie and I, we decided we had the most treasured marriage ever because we didn't have to watch this daily train wreck of a marriage go on in front of us every single day. And let me wrap up this whole rant about the visit of a lifetime. And maybe we deserved all of this because Dan is such a wonderful guy and Laura is such a wonderful gal. And these are just idiosyncratic behaviors of theirs. But how about Dan's hair? So did Dan think that he was doing me a favor by re-dyeing it, putting a fresh coat of paint on his mullet mohawk right before he took a trip out to Vegas? Because as much as that bright pink top of the head color is appealing, it becomes much less appealing when I need to throw out the pillowcases after he leaves. Stupid me. Even an Airbnb gets a cleaning deposit. I don't know what I was thinking, guys. Okay? So, be careful if you're going to have guests. Maybe don't be as critical as we were. We tried. I tried. I don't mean to rant, but sometimes you just have to get it off your chest. And this way, maybe Dan will hear about it someday. And the next time he comes, he'll adjust his behavior just a smidge. Or maybe it's time for my wife and I to make a trip to Ohio and let them have just a small taste of what we experienced when they were here. Love your friends, guys. We call it refrigerator rights. Keep those doors open and let them enjoy whatever they want to. Thanks for listening.
I'm pretty sure none of that was true.
Well, you can always guess and, hyperventilate over it. I'm not sure. Luca, did you want to say hi to anybody? Luca, come up on the table. Say hi to everybody. Oh, you're not going to come up. Okay, my cat's in here. Dan loves my cat. He was very kind to my cat. He's not so kind to me, but it's okay.
Any Pokemon in the news lately?
All right, so biggest news item that we've had lately is, as David said, tomorrow as we're recording, or yesterday or 2 days ago as you're getting this, is Pokemon Day. And some stores are doing some events for Pokemon Day, and they advertised that they were going to have some promos. And they've shown off what promos their stores are going to be giving away. And let me tell you, if anyone out there is looking for a rare Pokemon card, and they're having trouble getting it because it's rare, all you have to do is let us know. Tell me and David to buy our copies. Because as soon as we do that, they're gonna release them in bigger numbers. We saw that with the On the Balls, we saw that with the Pokemon Togethers, and now we're seeing it with, amongst other things, those League promo Pikachus that very, very small number got given out in Australia months ago. Seemed like those few stores in Australia had the only ones. We bought them, paid about $250 a piece, $200 to $250, somewhere in that range.
Never say the prices, Dan. It makes us look like dummies. Just say we overpaid and stop talking about the actual numbers.
Yeah, and now every store is getting a ton of them to give away for free. They're also getting the thank you promos to give away for free that Europe got, but we never got over here. We got the Hydreigon over here, but there was that other set of 5 that Europe got that we didn't. We've both ordered those. We've both bought them from Europe over the last couple of years. Those are coming out. And also the 3 Rebel Clash League promos. The Flapple, the Twin Energy, and the Colossal. Which I ordered mine. I had them shipped to my mum before I last went over there. We just ordered yours while I was there. Those 3 are also getting given out. Interestingly, there is a new promo for Pokemon Day. It's a Cerulege. It's Cosmos Foil. It has the Pokemon Day logo on it. Local stores aren't getting that one. To get that one, you had to order from the Pokemon Center or get lucky and go to somewhere like Walmart or Target or Best Buy on Pokemon Day. That was the Pokemon Center order I talked about at the start of the show. We got ours in today. Still going to go to Pokemon Day at some stores. Laura's helping run some. I'm going to go along. We'll see how it is. But it's another card that we overpaid for.
Did you get the card?
I got the Pokemon Day card, yeah, but I'm talking about the Pikachu is now another one that we've massively overpaid for because they've released it. But we
Okay.
did get our Pokemon Day cards. They just arrived today from the Pokemon Center.
Okay. So you'll show that in the video.
Yeah, we'll have that in the video.
And I do want to clarify though, when you talk about the fact that there's all of these cards that these stores are supposed to get for free now, whether or not that's the thank you promos or that's Pokemon Together, whatever they might be, that doesn't mean they're going to be given out to the world for free, right?
I think for Pokemon Day, I think these ones are supposed to just be you turn up and you don't have to purchase anything. I know that the actual Cerulege, the Pokemon Day one, when you go to Walmart, Target, or whatever, you'll be expected to make a purchase in order to get the card. You don't have to pay anything for the card itself, but you will have to make a purchase to get it. Same as you had to make a purchase from the Pokemon Center in order to get the card. But these league stamped cards, you should just be given. I don't believe you have to make any sort of purchase to get these. You should just be able to go in and get them.
Okay. But saying that, I mean, all I'm really saying, Dan, is that saying that you should be given them in this hobby makes no sense at all. Because 3/4 of the time, it's like saying, anything that's worth more money, the stores, even though they're not supposed to, they hang on to. They say they didn't get it. They wait, and then all of a sudden, somebody's selling it 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks later. So certainly prices come down. Obviously, much more supply and your demand then and supply exceeds demand. But hopefully they won't just be free. Not that I don't want them to be free, but from the standpoint of folks who've already paid more money for them, hopefully there'll actually be some associated cost, at least down the road after Pokemon Day. But it's no different than when I think about the Van Gogh promos. I was going to mention in the news as well that, people have been calling me and offering me boxes of the Van Gogh promos. And, so now they've come out and people have 400 cards, 800 cards, 1,200 cards. And yet the price has barely moved because there's so much greed involved that nobody wants to be the first to go down enough. They still want to try to see if they can, we're going to sell it as a sealed box. It's going to be so rare in the future because you never had a chance to buy 16 boxes of 25 cards each in one carton that's sealed for the 400 cards, but we're still going to charge you 120 a card, which is ultimately ridiculous. But it's just indicative of the greed that sort of consumes this entire hobby at this point in time. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, sure, the cards are going to have some associated cost, but it's just going to be nowhere near what for the other ones, for the League promos and the thank you promos, like the Rebel Clash League promos. They're probably going to stay at what they were because they weren't that expensive. It's just the Pikachu had an associated cost with a substantial rarity that no longer exists. I will say, in terms of stores selling cards, they put out some more rules. They said a few weeks ago, I think we might have talked about it, that stores were being told if they run Pokemon leagues and they also sell singles, they're now limiting what sort of thing they can sell in their store. So if a store runs a league and sells singles, they're never allowed to sell any sort of league promo. Even if they purchase, they're not allowed to go and purchase them from people to resell. They're just not allowed to have them in their store. Prize packs, they've said stores cannot sell sealed prize packs under any circumstance. No matter how far down the line it is, they're just not allowed to do it. The cards that you get out of prize packs, they're not allowed to sell as singles until 3 years after that card was first released in a prize pack. So I think it's been about a year, 2 years now since Prize Pack Series 1. There's another year before they can even start selling those prize pack cards as singles in store. And then it'll be 6 months after that they're allowed to start selling Series 2. It's just to try and cut down on these stores who are, getting their prize packs, not giving them out in the way that they're supposed to, and just trying to flip them for profit.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's certainly we'd love to believe that, and I certainly believe that's what they say. Again, I think there's just so many ways to get around it. You have your brother's sister-in-law on the other side to sell whatever they want.
The store owner can put it up on eBay under someone else's name. It's cutting down on the association of people walk into their store for Pokemon League and then the store's taking advantage of them right there by selling something they shouldn't be allowed to sell. I think it's cutting down on that one. it's maybe not too much of an extra hassle for the stores, but I think it's more about protecting these newer players from being gouged on by these stores who are trying to sell them stuff that they really should just be giving them for showing up.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously makes sense completely, and it's an optics thing. You have to make sure no matter what things look like it's right. But I
Yeah,
watch every single day, and I see more and more Pokemon type of paraphernalia come out, whatever that is. That could be that could be custom made cards, or that could be custom made posters, or that could be anything.
yeah,
It just seems like there's no more policing. I mean, I've even seen the magazines that come out that are not licensed by Pokemon, but they've got all this Pokemon stuff inside it. I think that Pokemon is just so large now. It's really their legal team would have any amount of difficulty trying to start going through and policing any of this stuff. And again, it's
yeah.
not where they make their money, right? I mean, something would have to be so egregious that the next release is coming, and the next set is coming, and the next Pokemon Day is coming. But
Well, the thing is with the leagues and the idea of not being allowed to sell this stuff, it's not something like counterfeit product where they would have to get the legal team involved and have to sue them through official means. This would just simply be a case of, we've been sent photos of your store showing that on this date you were selling this product. You're done. You don't have a league anymore. Like
I
they,
don't. I don't know that they do that, Dan. I'm just saying I hear you. I understand what you're saying. I just very much debate whether or not that they would take any of that as egregious enough for them to actually care about it. I understand. And I know you're saying you think they would.
yeah.
I would find it amazing if they did. So
I mean, I feel like they will do it for newer, smaller leagues. I think there are certain stores that are grandfathered into some protection who can do whatever they want. I
right.
think we've discussed that a little bit before, that certain stores get special treatment and can do whatever they want. Certain
Yeah.
people in Pokemon gives them special allowances that the rest of us don't get. But I think it will, if they see this idea of people are starting up stores or starting up leagues just to try and get this and not actually running the leagues, then but like they won't be shutting down their stores, but it will just be a case of, okay, well, you're not getting all of your prize packs next month. It will be something like that. It won't be a big we're going after you. It's just, okay, we're going to stop sending you free stuff. I think that's all it'll be. But
There's so many prize packs out there. If you just look just at how
yeah,
many prize packs, how many sellers of prize packs there are, it's ad infinitum, literally. You could just keep going through eBay listings until you. In fact, I like to sometimes when I can't sleep at night, I just go through prize pack listings, and eventually, after about an hour and a half, I fall asleep. Well, that and a melatonin as well. You don't want to take too much of that stuff, just a little bit, like that is 5 milligrams or something. It's all right. It's good. It's not dependent, but I like to it's a placebo thing. Dan, Dan, just keep talking, buddy. I went off. I think of the pizza. I could smell it. It's so cold now that the waft of the nice smell is gone. So that's fine. Just keep going, Dan.
well, I mean, I think we're pretty much done. I think that's probably all of the Pokemon news for this week. Unless you had any other news items you wanted to bring up, I think that's all we need to talk about.
I'm going to pull a Dan, and I'm going to say my news item is I'm hungry as heck, and it's been so wonderful to be on here with you. I'm going to just finish up with no more news items and say the following. If you are kind enough to watch us, I can't thank you enough. I'm sincerely appreciative. Every day, I try to re-gauge myself and say, just stop worrying about the number of viewers. Just love the friends and people we've made through this experience and this journey so far. Like Dan says, we were at 200 views. 250 was good 6 months ago. Now we're at 700. So I love all of you that have continued to be a part of us, our lives, and let us be a part of yours. And I just can't thank you enough. So you know what? We're going to keep doing quality programming, which involves Dan, not as much me. And hopefully you tell a friend every once in a while, and we just keep rocking and rolling. But I'm just sincerely appreciative of all of you, and thank you.
Yeah, just from me as well, a huge thanks to people who listen, to people who share the content, people who try and get people involved on Instagram and stuff. And I should be saying this every week, but I keep forgetting. Thank you to Chase from More Than Never, who very kindly allows us to use music for the beginning and end of this podcast. Their Spotify link is always in the description of the podcast videos as well, and also they're shouted out in my Instagram stories and stuff when we post the new episodes. So if you do like the music, that you're hearing at the start and end of these podcasts. Be sure to go and check them out and check out some of their other songs too. Anything else, Dave, or are we all good?
That's it. I'm all good, my friend. Thank you for taking the time, and I can't wait to get on the next podcast again within the next month or so.
Cool. Hopefully it'll be next week. So thanks again for watching, and if you do have any of those cards we've mentioned that David's looking for throughout the video, be sure to drop us some messages as well. But for now, we will see you again very soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Koffee Talks with Dan Norton and David Person, featuring music by More Than Never and artwork by Laura Norton. A special shout out to all of our Patreon members. Join us again next time.
But they don't want you to.